Can you imagine if trees could talk? What would they tell us? What have they seen? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about that. We're going to do some crafts and play some games, so keep watching. Yep, this week it's autumn trees in Exploring Nature with Children, and we've come out quite early to come and study some trees together. But yeah, imagine if trees could talk, how interesting that would be. Some of them are 10, 20, 30, 40, hundreds of years old. In fact, I'm going to show you a tree later that's even older than that. But yeah, they're so old that they must have seen lots of different changes. Imagine the different people that have walked past them, what clothes they might have worn, what vehicles they might have seen go past. What events might they have seen? Some wars and battles, some celebrations. That's what we're going to have a little think about today. Before we do that though, I'm going to test your knowledge a little bit about history. I'm going to show you a photo of a tree and then a picture of someone from the past or something from the past. And you need to guess whether you think the tree is older than the item or person that I'm showing you. Does that make sense? Let's go. Use the pause button if you need to, but here we go. Which is oldest, the penny farthing or this yew tree in Scotland? It's the tree, 2,000 to 3,000 years old. What about a Tudor house or this tree here? What do you think? Easily, the tree is much older. We've got a Viking here and a beautiful tree there on the right. Which do you think is oldest? They're about the same age. And here, Stonehenge or this oak tree, what do you think? Stonehenge is the oldest. Part of our nature walk was going to the scrap store because we realised that if we wanted to protect trees, we needed to recycle more. So this craft uses all recycled material except for the paint. So we got canvases for just a few pennies. We made our own stampers out of leaves and created some big tree canvases that we're going to give Don't Tell Anyone for some presents at Christmas. I wonder if you have any special memories about trees. When I was little, I really wanted a horse, like absolutely desperate for a horse. Every Christmas I would put it at the top of my Christmas list. But we lived in a town that was very built up. We had a small garden and horses are really expensive, and I'd never even ridden a horse or even probably seen many horses in real life. So instead of having a horse, anytime we went to the woods and there were branches that would stick out quite low, I would climb on that branch, and in my mind it would be the best horse ever, and we would gallop off into the distance, and I'd imagine all sorts of adventures. So trees are really great for me because they make me have lots of ideas and stories kind of pop in my head as I see the trees and imagine what might happen. When I was a little bit older, I spent a lot of time building dens with my friend Jackie, and we had a great time doing that. And sometimes even just the way the air smells reminds me of when we would ride our bikes to the woods and build dens together. And then I have another memory that's not quite so lovely, but it is a little bit funny. So when I was even older, I was probably about 19, and I went for a walk by the river near my house, and it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and I took a notebook and a pen, and I was going to sit by the river, watch the swans go by, and write down, I don't know, poetry, my thoughts, all sorts of amazing things. I had big plans, and I started off pretty well. I was sat there by the river writing away when I heard a kind of thump behind me, and then a few more thumps, and then quite a lot more thumps, and I turned around and there are about 12 or 15 cows rushing towards me. Now, as I said, I grew up living in towns. I wasn't really that comfortable with cows and a lot of creatures like that, so I panicked. And I did the first thing that came into my head. I turned around, I saw a tree, and I climbed up it as quickly as I possibly could. And the cows circled round the tree, and they all looked up with their big brown eyes, and they were probably completely harmless, but I started to panic and I stayed in that tree. Half of me was laughing because I thought it was quite funny really being stuck in a tree surrounded by cows, but a lot of me was panicking, and this was before people had mobile phones, so I couldn't just pick up my phone and ask someone to come and help. So I sat in that tree for a long time. looking down at all of those big brown eyes looking up at me. And I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there. And eventually, I wish I had a really exciting end to this story. I wish like the fire brigade came and put the ladders up and got me out the tree. Eventually, the cows just kind of looked at each other and walked off, just as quickly as they'd arrived. And eventually, when I was sure they'd gone, I got down from the tree, and I didn't sit and write any more poetry. I ran as quickly as I could all the way home. And that kind of has a funny memory for me. So I have some funny memories about trees. I have some lovely memories about imagining and playing with trees. I wonder what memories that you have. That's what I'd like you to talk about this morning. You can pause the video and talk about some of the memories or stories that you have that you remember around trees or around nature, because nature isn't just about exploring the science of it, it's also about experiencing it and being in it and part of it, and your stories are part of nature too. So have a chat about some of your favourite memories with trees or outside in nature. After we visit the scrap store, one of the things that we like to do is just pick some materials and challenge ourselves to see what we can make without any kind of plan. So this is a decoration you could hang in a tree, but we tried to use tree colours, and we plaited it together and then curled it round, and we just kind of made it up as we went along, and that made the final result seem almost more magical than if we'd have planned it. Well, the sun is coming up behind me over the art gallery up there, and so we're going to go and explore some trees and compare and contrast them. We're going to think about things like the texture of the bark, the colour, the size both how wide and round the trunk, but also how tall they are. We're going to look at the leaves, we're going to think about the type of creatures that live in them. So we'll show you a little bit of the things that we got up to, but let me tell you your 3, 2, 1 challenge today, because it's kind of the same as we're doing. So 3, can you find 3 trees that you can compare and contrast? Talk about what's the same and what's different about them all. So 3 trees to compare and contrast. Can you think of 2 stories about those trees? They can be completely made up. You could imagine all sorts of amazing things that they might have seen in the past, or they might be real stories that you've experienced. And then can you make 1 place next to a tree to build and play in? So 3 trees to compare and contrast. 2 stories to do with those trees, and 1 place like a den or a picnic or something like that where you can play and be around those trees. 3, 2, 1, go! The first tree we studied was in a very damp habitat. You can tell that because the moss and the fungus there need a lot of moisture to thrive, and they really are thriving. We also noticed these creatures. Can you see them? Lots of slugs, massive slugs all around the bottom of the tree. That was a great find. This next tree had fungus at the bottom as well, but it had a lot of sap from where the tree had been damaged. And of course, wherever we go, we always build dens. Maybe you could have a go at building one this week too.